Welcome to the first ever Flow Reading Space book event. I'm Galina Espinoza, the editor-in-chief of Flow Space, a digital brand dedicated to science-backed storytelling about every aspect of women's well-being, from brain health and heart health to longevity and aging, to today's topic, menopause. Our guest today has done more to change the conversation around menopause than just about anybody else out there. In doing so, she has amassed a staggering 3 million plus followers across social media. I'm sure many of you are part of that following. And her latest book, which you will all be getting a copy of today, has hit #1 on the Amazon bestseller list. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Mary Claire Haver. This is your first test getting up on this chair. Dr. Haver, you heard me talk about this incredible following that you have built. Why do you think so many women, and quite a few men, are responding to your message in this way?
I think that I was having a conversation that they were ready to have, and that was being done in a way that was backed by science and evidence, and one that other people just weren't having. I've always been able to break scientific things down in a way that my patients could understand. And so I just felt like when I went on social media, I just acted like I was talking to a patient and telling her how I would explain it to her in the office. And that really seemed to resonate with my audience. You know, I would wake up and there'd be 10,000 views on a video. My children are like, wow, Mom, that's amazing.
Do they think you're cool now?
It depends. So my girls are the ones who got me started on TikTok during the pandemic. And I had a small following on Facebook, which I thought was huge at the time. They're like, Mom, you've got to do this TikTok thing. And they showed me videos of other healthcare providers or clinicians who were teaching a lot of dancing and pointing at words. And that's how I started, to music. And I would point at things about periods and birth control or, menopause. And then as the conversation got bigger, I actually read the comments, and you could post questions, and so many questions were coming in about menopause. And so I just kind of went with it. I leaned into that space, and that's when things really exploded for me.
Your new book, of course, is called The New Menopause, which got me thinking, what was the old menopause? As you reflect on what the old menopause was, what is it that you want us to just kind of get out of our minds, leave behind us in the rear view?
That it's the beginning of the end. And really, that's what I thought. I got maybe an hour's worth of menopause education in medical school. It was one lecture. And it was the end of your periods, the end of fertility, and maybe she'll have some hot flashes. That's it. In a 4-year OB-GYN curriculum, and I say this as a former residency program director, so I was in charge of the curriculum for 32 residents a year. We maybe had 6 hours, I maybe had 6 hours, and that was, I left that position in 2018. That was pretty much held up till then. We learned important stuff, how to deliver babies, how to get people pregnant, how to stay pregnant, how to do surgery and hysterectomies and pediatric gynecology and oncology and all the things that we did. Menopause got shoved in a box with everything else. And not that what I didn't learn was important, but I think we didn't learn not nearly enough. And it wasn't until my own menopause when I started deep diving and responding to all the questions I was getting on social and started reading research papers that I realized I didn't know until a few years ago that every organ system in our body is affected by menopause, And the book is what I want people to realize. It's not the end, but if we don't address it, it could be a faster march towards the end of our lives.
I want to turn to the book now because as I was reading it, there were so many moments where you made me gasp. Starting on page 1, it didn't take very long. It was page 1, and I want to read a sentence that I went, oh my gosh, she is so right. You wrote, many will argue that menopause is a natural process, and we should just let it take its course. My response is that yes, the process is natural, but that doesn't mean that it is not harmful. I would love for you to kind of peel this back, because it's something I see a lot on my social feed with women saying, why are we over medicalizing this? Why are we talking about this? Like, it's natural, just suck it up.
Right. That is today in a lot of schools of thought the prevailing notion. So you're going to continue to see this for a while, that it's natural. If you just change your attitude towards something, it'll get better. And I take that back and say, why are we giving a biological process a psychological tag? You know, that's the problem with women's health. This kind of brings into the bigger picture of what's happening with women in medicine. We've not been studied adequately. We've been left out of many medical studies. You know, we are treated as little men with breasts and uteruses, and that's just not right. Our unique biology is not addressed. And these were the things that I was learning. So what most people don't realize is that, you know, females are different than males. Go figure. And that when we look at where our sex hormones come from and our gonads, basically the ovaries are born with your entire egg supply your whole life, okay? And they start deteriorating when your max egg supply is when you're 5 months in utero inside of your mom's, okay? We're born with 1 to 2 million eggs. By the time we're 30, we're down to 120,000, so about 10% of our egg supply. And then by the time we're 40, most of us are down to around 3% of our egg supply. And menopause means the end. No more eggs. They're gone. So that whole factory where we make those estrogen, very predictable estrogen and progesterone surges every month, can't work anymore. It's gone. And that loss of those sex hormones, the estrogen, the progesterone, and the testosterone, not as much because we also make some through the adrenal pathway, but still really affects us, accelerates several disease processes in our body. Anybody in here have a sudden alteration in their cholesterol levels with no changes in diet and exercise? Anybody's hemoglobin A1C starts shooting up and you didn't change one thing about your nutrition or exercise? These lead to significant health consequences. Our brains, if you read Lisa Mosconi's book, you know, The Menopause Brain, are completely rewired through the menopause transition. That leads to cognition changes and mental health changes. Our serotonin and dopamine levels dramatically change. And this leads to worsening mental health for more than half of the patients.
These are pretty dramatic symptoms that you are talking about. And yet, as you call out in the book, there is still a lack of seriousness with which the medical system takes these concerns from women. And I'm going to share an experience that you share in the book that you say you cringe about now when you think about it when you were in medical school. This was in the 1990s, and I need to emphasize that because that was not that long ago. And there would be certain female patients who would come in complaining of things like they couldn't sleep, they had no libido, they were just tired all the time, and they didn't understand why. And they would get slapped with a tag with the initials WW. Does anyone want to guess what WW stood for? Whiny woman.
And if she was Caucasian, it was a WWW. Whiny
white woman. Whiny women in the 90s, women coming in seeking
multiple vague complaints. We weren't taught that this constellation of symptoms could possibly be related to hormonal change. And so she got labeled as difficult, as whiny, and I remember I was an intern first year, and we had gynecology clinic, and in other parts of the country they call them whiny gynies. So I've done surveys of other healthcare providers, and this is a phenomenon across the country. We don't, and I'm looking at Dr. Flagg right there. Like, we didn't write that in the chart. No professor ever said it to me, but it was this kind of hierarchical thing. So the upper levels would grab the surgery cases first because they need to operate and get their numbers, okay? And then that would leave everything else for us. And the interns got the WWs. And I just remember my upper level who was kind of coaching me saying, well, he's Texas, be sweet, but you're not going to be able to help her. You know, she's just this time of her life, and what's going on? He wasn't trying to be an asshole, but you know, and it took me writing this book, and that story bubbled up, and I was like, should I even write this? I'm literally calling out an entire medical program. But I think it's important because so many of you have been in that position and felt dismissed, and no one could put the symptoms all together and realize that this is part of what's happening behind the scenes when your ovaries decline and, when estrogen walks out the door, is we have these multiple vague complaints.
Well, let's try to leave that way of thinking behind with the old menopause. And let's talk about the new menopause and what is giving you hope and encouragement. What has changed since you were in medical school that you really see as a positive that you want women to take away?
I think that the boomers are pissed. The Xers are not standing for it. And the millennials are like, no, this is not going to be a thing for us. My daughter is a first-year medical student at the same place I did residency. And she's like, Mom, menopause should be optional. Like, she's a little radicalized, but she said, she hears it in a lecture more often. People are talking about it. They're recognizing not only is it end of fertility, which for me was a blessing. I didn't want more children after 48. But that also, it's accelerating the risk of other diseases, specifically neurodegenerative and cardiovascular disease. And so, love the new technology that's being explored around extending the life of the ovary. Why is it that, our male counterparts get to make their genetic material fresh every day and ours stops? Like, is there something we can do on the technological side to, maybe you can't get pregnant again, which probably for most of us would be okay after 50, but especially if we didn't have fertility issues, but continue enough estrogen production naturally so that it's protective for our other organs.
We, of course, can't talk about the new menopause without talking about menopause hormone therapy. We could, of course, spend 2 hours talking about this, and it is, of course, highly personal and something that everyone should discuss with their doctors and get that advice. I love that in the book there is an entire chapter dedicated to everything you ever wanted to know about hormone therapy, because I know this is the biggest topic that your followers come to you asking about. So, in 3 sentences, what is kind of the top line summary of what women need to know today about where we are with hormone therapy versus back at the turn of the century?
It doesn't cause breast cancer. That's number 1, okay? Number 2, the vast majority of women are candidates and are really good candidates, and are not allowed to have the conversation. Right now, you only have about a 10% chance of walking into your primary care, OB-GYN, family medicine care doctor, and them having enough education and resources to have an informed and educated conversation with you, and that's a travesty.
Just like we don't know a lot about hormones and this transition in women's lives, we also don't really know why we go into menopause. There are a lot of theories around this. The most popular one that I've heard is the grandmother theory that, now you can focus on taking care of the next generation. But you have kind of a different take on it, and I'd love for you to share that.
Speaking with the Aviva, actually at South by Southwest, I got to see Daisy Robinson and some of the PhDs who are working on extending the life of the ovary. And they're like, that grandmother hypothesis was put together by one man, one day in North Carolina, and that's it. And there's no proof to that. And that we exist to simply take care of the next generation, and are made to live 30 years of our lives without the benefit of our hormones.
More free labor.
Yeah, more free labor, basically. And so I'm just going to put that in the patriarchal, section and leave that on the side. Listen, if your goal in life is to care for your grandchildren, I think that's beautiful, but I don't think that's required.
So how do you want women to think about this stage of their life, which you point out we spend a good 30% of our lives in this stage?
What kept you healthy in your 30s, 20s, 40s, probably is not going to be your best bet now. Our bodies change, and we can't stop it. And that we have to really think about how we approach nutrition, especially how we approach movement. And so I was a child of the 80s, right? And I did step aerobics and ran marathons in my 30s and did everything I could to be small because that was healthy, thin was healthy. And that is such, and so many of us come in so many healthy, beautiful, different body shapes, and that this relentless pursuit of thinness probably has cut away at our bone and muscle strength, which we need desperately to avoid a nursing home. So listen, we live longer than men, right? I'll take the 4 years if I don't have to be in a nursing home. Because the conversations I'm having with my siblings right now over my mother, who has been on a walker and has dementia, is my sister and I every day. What can we do to not do this to our children? The decisions, the fret, how do we have to tear out the bathroom, the decisions my parents wouldn't make for themselves. And now my dad's died. And this is real. When my patients come to me, they're not coming in wanting a bikini body. I mean, that would be nice. But they're like, listen, I want to age well. I want to be crawling on the floor, getting up. I want to be able to think, and I want to be able to move. That is what scares them. And I'm like, the decisions we're putting in place right now when they're in clinic, I do their muscle scan, I do their body scan, we're looking at their visceral fat. What can we do to decrease your risk of hypertension, diabetes, and stroke? What can we do to increase your muscle mass so that you're not falling, so that you can get off the floor, so that you stay out of a nursing home because you can't walk, so you can take care of yourself? What can we do to decrease your risk of cognitive decline? These are the things that we need to focus on at this stage of our lives, and it's right now that the new habits we put into place that we didn't know about maybe in our 30s and early 40s are going to make that difference for us as we age.
And this is really what the new conversation is, where we are challenging the medical system to look at our whole life health, not just during our reproductive years.
Women are just broken up into body parts. And it's like the fear of breast cancer is driving the majority of healthcare decisions in this country. And if you're serious about breast cancer, stop drinking alcohol. That's the number one thing you can do. And maybe get on some Ozempic, because obesity is the biggest risk factor for breast cancer. And so, all of this stuff, like breast cancer is important. I get it, but the number one thing that's going to kill a woman is cardiovascular disease. The number one thing that's going to make you freaking miserable is if you fall and break your hip. And that's avoidable. And we're not teaching women how to avoid that.
So how do you as a patient go into your doctor's office and say, I know you're my OBGYN and you've been treating my reproductive health for years now, but I'm in menopause and I have different concerns? How do you get them to actually hear that?
You can't make them do anything, right? You can start that conversation. A menopause visit is not a well woman visit, first of all. The healthcare system in this country is broken. And if you're fortunate enough to have insurance, you're going to have to make a problem visit, okay? And so your well woman exam, you might broach the question, how comfortable are you in prescribing hormone therapy? And if they say, I'm not comfortable at all, thank them for their honesty and find a new provider. You can go to the Menopause Society, menopause.org, and go look for the certified check, because anybody can join, but you need to take that test and be certified. That's one way. We have some resources on our website in the U.S. as well. Menopause Society covers Canada too. But you cannot expect to walk into your wonderful OB-GYN who delivered your babies and did all the things to be versed in hormone, in menopause care. Flip side, there are these hormone clinics popping up. It depends. A doctor's as good as a doctor is, but the people are seeing a way to make money easy. And I'm really anxious about the way some of these clinics are run, and it's just like a chop shop coming in, and they're stuffing you full of pellets and whatnot. And I think there's just better ways for you to get hormone therapy without running the risk of being over-medicalized.
And that hints at all of the misinformation that we're seeing on social media, which I think in part explains why people are turning to you.
Even in medical journals.
Even in medical journals.
Lancet
Do you want to talk
article.
about the Lancet for a minute for folks who maybe don't do medical journal reading?
So there was a recent article that was published in the Lancet, which it's the British equivalent to maybe the New England Journal. It's pretty prestigious. It's one of the top line, and they published a 4-part series on menopause care. And those of us in the Metaverse, Dr. Heidi Flagg is behind me. So
Hey, hi, Dr. Flagg.
Spring OBGYN, everybody in New York. Who she actually probably has a waiting list of 6,000 right now.
We're going to get you some more patients today.
And, we were excited, like, okay, what is this about? And we got the press release first. It was embargoed, but, we have our ways. And so we're sharing it in our menopause text, and we're all flabbergasted because the top line says menopause is over-medicalized. And basically, it was a 4-part takedown on how women just need to suck it up and take a deep breath and get some behavioral therapy.
And take a nap, I
Behavioral
believe.
therapy.
Right.
No, it was actually written by women. One was one of the lead authors of the Women's Health Initiative. She wanted her pound of flesh. Of the main authors, they quoted 212 medical journals. 17 or 18% were from their own research. It was very cherry picked. It was very biased. It was very much going in with you don't need hormone therapy. The smallest dose for the lowest amount possible. Completely ignored the well-published and publicized cardiovascular benefits, neuroprotective benefits. And, we said, no, we're not going to stand for this. And I don't care if it's the Lancet or New England Journal or anybody else. So we banded together and wrote a rebuttal and had all of, our own medical journal articles, and it was published in Ms. Magazine. So
Yes.
we are not going to let this happen to y'all if we can avoid it.
Speaking of misinformation, something that I see pop up a lot in my feed is this idea of the need to rebalance your hormones. Yes, I know. But so many people, I see them asking you, do I need to rebalance my hormones? How do I balance my hormones? Can you talk about why this is not the right way to think about it?
There are dozens and dozens of hormones in our body, okay? We have brain hormones, gut hormones, sexual hormones, all the things, okay? First of all, look, who's saying this and why? What are they trying to sell you? I mean, this is a doctor who sells supplements, so, but what are they trying to sell you? When we're in a normal, healthy reproductive cycle, our hormones are never balanced. We have ebbs and flows of estrogen, progesterone, LH, and FSH every single month. It's a very predictable cycle. Does it work well in every woman every time? No. Do we have missed ovulations? Yes. Do we have, but pretty much each month, you're going to surge on day 14-ish, you're going to, in estradiol, then progesterone's going to come up, and that, and then in perimenopause, that whole cycle goes cattywampus, and we end up in a zone of hormonal chaos. And, all this hormone balancing, and one of my other, pet peeves is when they say estrogen dominance. That is a marketing term, not a medical term. I would never pick up the phone and call a certified menopause provider and say she has estrogen dominance. Those of you who are being told that are not being treated by a menopause-educated provider. Estrogen dominance means you're not ovulating regularly and you're not having enough progesterone to counterbalance your estrogen, and that's not a medical condition. You're either an ovulatory because you are polycystic ovarian syndrome, hypothalamically suppressed, or you're in perimenopause. That is the root cause. That's what we need to treat. So I just feel like people are trying their best. Look, we've had this huge void in menopause care. And all these cottage industries have just popped up. And, some hormones, I guess, is better than none. But, I've had these sweet women coming to me after seeing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 doctors with buckets of supplements, of things I can't even pronounce. I don't even know what they are. And I have a degree in nutrition, and just throwing everything they can at it because they're so desperate for help. And there are charlatans out there who will sell you these cures. So that's one of the terms you need to really tread lightly and be warned. Hormones in females really aren't that balanced. They kind of ebb and flow, and that's a natural cycle until you're menopausal, and then you have none. So.
Well, I want to focus now on the final section of this book. What I love about it is that the entire last third of the book is dedicated to every possible symptom of menopause. I counted 77, is that right? 77 symptoms of menopause. And you not only explain why you might be experiencing this, but you share tools and strategies for how to cope with these symptoms. And to me, I feel like this is a book I'm going to be turning to time and time again when, for example, I start having itchy ears. Did anyone here know that itchy ears are a symptom? Who has had itchy ears? Yes. All right. Why itchy ears?
Well, a few reasons. We have nerves that innervate our skin become inflamed quite easily when we lose estrogen. On top of that, we lose the transepidermal water loss after estrogen. When estrogen leaves the building, you have the skin gets thinner, you lose collagen, and we lose water content. And so all of that kind of contributes to being really itchy. Now put that in a little tiny ear canal where you can't quite get to, where that's happening, and it drives you crazy because there's so many nerves that innervate the ear. So the nerves are inflamed and the skin's thin and dry and itchy, and so that just kind of is a perfect storm for a lot of women. And so taking a little vaginal estrogen cream, getting it in there on a Q-tip and just rubbing it can work miracles, and some cortisone can help as well.
All right, let's whip through a couple of other symptoms. Heart palpitations, because totally scary when you are pointing out the high risk of cardiovascular disease, increased in risk when you enter menopause, and here you are having heart palpitations.
Yeah, so I can't tell you how many stories I've read or patients who have come in who've had $1 million cardiac workup for having menopausal palpitations. It is a known, recognized symptom of menopause. It's like similar to a hot flash. The same process that causes a hot flash can also cause palpitations. And no one ever thinks of it, and not all palpitations are menopausal palpitations, but it's not a zebra, it's a horse. Like in medicine, we look for the horses before the zebras. And so we're spending millions, billions probably on cardiac workups for just give her a trial of some estrogen and see if they go away, and then do the workup.
Which is why we need an integrated approach to healthcare. I think the one symptom all women can agree on is weight gain, but you describe it not as weight gain in the book. You call it body composition changes. Talk to me about that.
So when you look at the epidemiologic data, women gain weight regardless of the state of menopause that they're in. We tend to gain 1 to 3 pounds a year. We see that accelerate through the menopause transition, but what is absolutely clear is where we gain weight changes. So we stop driving fat so much to the hips and thighs and have a much higher increase in intra-abdominal fat or visceral fat, what we say in medicine. So premenopausal women age matched will have about 8% of their fat be visceral fat, and that accelerates to 23%. As a postmenopausal woman, if that's happened to you, I don't have to remind you that happened, right? And so that was the number one, that's what led to the Galveston diet. What my own journey was what the is this?
All right, one more symptom. Irritability, or as my friends and I call it, why I hate my husband symptom.
So serotonin and dopamine levels
Dropping.
change. On top of that, so many of us don't understand what's happening to our bodies, right? Like so many of my patients, once we, nutrition, exercise, and hormone therapy, if they're a candidate, and we do all the things, and they look back and go, damn, wow, But really, the mental health changes is where I see the tragedy. And our SSRI use, because a lot of doctors don't know how to prescribe hormone therapy, they'll throw an antidepressant at you, and antidepressants are needed. I don't want to negate that they can be extremely life-changing for patients, but after the age of 40, our female rates of SSRIs doubles from 10 to 20%, and then at 60, it goes up to 25%. The most likely time for women to commit suicide and have the lowest quality of life is between the ages of 45 and 55. What is happening to a woman between the ages of 45 and 55? And so we have seen in the data that starting hormone therapy and addressing these things and acknowledging that this is happening, women are doing a lot better with their mental health through the menopause transition and into early menopause.
I just want to say, in hearing you talk about all of this, it's very hard not to feel really angry about how women have been and continue to be treated by the system. What's the antidote to that?
Legislation.
Talk about that. What do you
vote? Vote. Vote for people who care about your health care. People who are going to fight for change for you. We need at the medical society levels, and I don't think that this should all be dumped in the lap of the poor, busy OB-GYN. I think that there should be mandatory menopause training in every healthcare specialty and in every medical school, more than just the cliche 1 hour. You are more than just a cliche hot flash. Your health is more than you whining and complaining about, what's happening to your body and being dismissed and told this is a part of your life and this normally you're just going to have to get over it and go home. You can live your best, healthiest, happiest, most productive life right now and continue that health until the end of your days and not have your daughters, like my sister and I, constantly back and forth. What do we do about mom? What do we do about mom? There's no guarantees in life. But I want to die like a man. I just want to die. I don't want 10 years in a bed. where I can't think and can't move, and my kids have to take care of me. I don't want that. I don't want to do that to them.
I think we need that on a t-shirt, die like a man.
I just want to die. My grandfather drove a truck and then had a heart attack and died. Like my grandmother laid in a bed for 10 years, drooling on herself, and then died. You know, I get a choice here, and I think addressing our menopause and treating it the way it deserves to can lead us to better, not just lifespan, health span.
So it really seems like the key takeaway for all of us is we have to be proactive about our health and be advocates for our health. How best way to do that?
Educate yourself. So, you know, and hopefully, shameless plug, hopefully the book will serve as a source of a way for you to, I wanted it to be the what to expect when you're never going to expect again. I mean, you know, they wouldn't let me call it that, Teresa. So, you know, everybody bought that book when we were pregnant. It's always on the top. You know, I want this to be something like that. I feel like I could write it again and have 10 more symptoms and much more things, but at some point you have to stop. You know, but the research is exploding now. We're getting so much more good stuff, and the conversation is exploding. So that if that ends up being a catalyst for people educating themselves and the conversation to continue, then my work here is done.
Well, it really is an amazing accomplishment. So thank you for the book. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for being here with us today. And if you're interested in more conversations like this, please follow us at This Is Flow Space on all of your social channels. Sign up for our newsletter. There are QR codes around the room that you can scan. And we look forward to seeing you here again. Thank you all for coming.